I was sitting in a freezing cold courtroom in downtown Chicago, watching the man I used to love completely lose his mind. His face was blotchy, his hands were shaking, and his high-priced lawyer was desperately trying to get him to sit down and shut up. He was staring at me like I was a monster. But the truth, I was just the perfect, submissive, helpless little doll he had practically begged me to be. I played the role he wrote for me. I played it so well, in fact, that it completely destroyed his six-figure career, alienated his so-called friends, and landed him right here, begging a judge not to slap him with a permanent restraining order. He thought he was breaking my spirit. He didn't realize he was just handing me the blueprint to his own absolute ruin. My name is Riley, and if you've ever had to deal with a narcissist who constantly tried to dim your light, gaslit you into doubting your own sanity, or made you feel like you were never enough, pull up a chair and hit that subscribe button, because this revenge story, it is going to satisfy your soul. To understand how we ended up in a courtroom, you have to understand how the nightmare started. I've always been an independent woman. I grew up in a household with a single dad who was a mechanic. By the time I was 12, I knew how to change a tire, bleed the brakes, and use a power drill without taking my own fingers off. My dad raised me to be self-sufficient because he never wanted me to have to rely on a man for my basic survival. I had a great job in logistics, a solid group of friends, and I owned my own condo in the suburbs. I was proud of who I was. Then, I met Caleb. At first, Caleb was the ultimate catch. He was a senior account executive at Apex Meridian, a massive corporate firm in the city. He wore tailored suits, smelled like expensive cologne, and knew exactly what to say to make me feel like the center of the universe. The first 6 months were a dream. It was the classic love-bombing phase, though I didn't know the term back then. But the moment we officially moved in together, the mask completely slipped. It started with tiny, passive-aggressive comments. I'd come home from the gym in my sweatpants, and he'd look me up and down with this subtle sneer. "You're wearing that?" he'd say. My ex always wore sundresses around the house. It's just nice when a woman puts in a little effort, you know? I brushed it off at first. But the comments didn't stop. They mutated. They became a daily drip feed of poison designed to chip away at my self-esteem. He started criticizing my laugh, saying it was too loud and unladylike. He hated that I didn't wear a full face of makeup on Sunday mornings. He hated that I watched true crime documentaries instead of reality TV. And more than anything, he absolutely despised my independence. Caleb was the king of weaponized incompetence. If a light bulb blew out, he'd sit in the dark and complain until I changed it. If the Wi-Fi router needed resetting, he'd act like it was a nuclear launch code that only I could decipher. Yet, whenever I stepped up and handled things, instead of being grateful, he got deeply insecure and mean. He constantly told me I was too masculine, and that I was emasculating him by not letting him be the man of the house. I was walking on eggshells in my own home, constantly trying to shrink myself so his fragile ego could feel bigger. I was emotionally exhausted, drained from the constant gaslighting. He had me convinced that my competence was actually a character flaw. The inciting incident, the moment the final thread of my patience violently snapped, happened on a freezing Tuesday night in November. I was cooking dinner after a brutal 10-hour shift. I went to turn on the garbage disposal under the kitchen sink, and instead of the usual grinding noise, there was a sickening clunk, followed by a horrible metallic screech. The sink instantly backed up with gross, murky water smelling like rotting food. I sighed, dried my hands, and walked into the living room. Caleb was sprawled on the couch playing video games on his PS5 with his headset on. "Hey," I said, waving a hand to get his attention. "The disposal is jammed. It's backed up pretty bad. Do you think you could take a look at it?" He didn't even pause his game. "Just call a plumber tomorrow, Riley. I'm busy." "Caleb, a plumber is going to charge us $200 just to walk through the door," I reasoned. "And we can't use the sink at all. It smells awful." He let out a loud, dramatic sigh, finally pulling one side of his headset off. "I don't know anything about plumbing. I'm a corporate executive, not a handyman. Just leave it. God, why do you always have to make everything a massive crisis?" I stared at him. The sheer entitlement radiating off him was nauseating. Fine. If he wasn't going to do it, I would. I went to the utility closet, grabbed my heavy-duty flashlight, a set of Allen wrenches, and a pair of pliers. I crawled under the dark, cramped space beneath the sink. It was nasty work. Water dripped on my forehead, and my knuckles scraped against the pipes. But within 20 minutes, I found the problem. A bent bottle cap wedged in the blades. I manually cranked the motor, pulled the cap out, hit the reset button, and boom. The disposal purred like a kitten. The sink drained perfectly. I slid out from under the sink, feeling a brief flash of satisfaction. I wiped the back of my hand across my forehead, completely forgetting my hands were covered in grime. Just then, Caleb walked into the kitchen to grab a beer. He stopped dead in his tracks. He looked at the open toolbox on the floor, then looked up at me. I had grease smeared across my cheek, my hair was a messy bun, and I was holding a wrench. Instead of saying, "Thank you," his face twisted into an expression of pure, unadulterated disgust. "What is wrong with you?" he snapped, his voice dripping with venom. I blinked, genuinely confused. "What?" I fixed it. "I saved us $200. "Look at you," he yelled, slamming the fridge door shut. "You look like a literal mechanic. You're covered in filth, holding a wrench. It is so utterly repulsive. Why can't you just be a dainty, normal woman for once in your life? I am so sick of dating a tomboy who acts like a construction worker." My heart pounded in my chest. I opened my mouth to defend myself, but he stepped closer, towering over me, pointing a finger directly in my face. "I'm warning you." Riley?" he hissed, his eyes cold and dead. "I am done with this independent, I-can-do-it-all attitude. It's toxic. You need to start acting like a real woman. You need to be soft, feminine, and let me take the lead. You act like a delicate, proper girlfriend who actually needs her man, or I swear to God, I'm packing my bags and walking out that door. I will not be with a woman who acts like a dude." He turned on his heel and stormed out of the kitchen, leaving me standing there holding a greasy wrench. For a solid minute, I just stood there in silence. The urge to throw the wrench at the back of his head was overwhelming. Tears of frustration pricked my eyes. I had paid half the rent, worked a 10-hour day, fixed our sink, and my reward was being called repulsive and threatened with a breakup because I wasn't a delicate, my proper girlfriend. But then the tears stopped. A strange, icy calm washed over me. He wanted a delicate, fragile, dainty little woman. He wanted a girlfriend who was completely helpless and relied on him for absolutely everything. He wanted me to act like a 1950s housewife who was terrified of breaking a nail. A slow, dark smile crept onto my face as I wiped the grease off my cheek. "Careful what you wish for, Caleb," I thought to myself, "because you are about to get exactly what you asked for. Good luck surviving it." The morning after our massive blowout over the kitchen sink, I woke up before Caleb. Usually, I'd be up at 6 a.m., throwing on my gym clothes, brewing a pot of black coffee, and getting a head start on my emails. But not today. Today was the first day of the rest of his life. Today, Operation Damsel in Distress officially commenced. I walked into the bathroom and stared at myself in the mirror. He wanted soft, he wanted delicate, he wanted a woman who needed a big, strong man to protect her from the big, bad world. Fine. I was going to give him a masterclass in malicious compliance. Instead of my usual tinted moisturizer and mascara, I spent a full 2 hours doing my makeup. We're talking contouring, baking, false lashes, the works. I curled my hair into these bouncy, flawless, pageant girl waves. I bypassed my comfortable slacks and blouses and dug out a tight pastel pink wrap dress and a pair of stiletto heels that I usually only wore to weddings. When Caleb finally rolled out of bed and stumbled into the kitchen around 8:30, I was sitting at the island, delicately sipping a latte out of a mug with 2 hands, looking like I had just stepped off the set of a 1950s sitcom. He stopped rubbing his eyes and stared at me, genuinely taken aback. "Whoa," he said, a slow, arrogant smirk spreading across his face. "Look at you. You look incredible, Riley. Got a big presentation at work today or something?" I fluttered my false eyelashes at him and gave him a soft, high-pitched giggle that took every ounce of my willpower not to cringe at. "No, silly. I thought a lot about what you said last night. You were right, Caleb. I've been letting myself go. I've been acting so harsh and aggressive lately. I just want to be pretty for you. I want to be the kind of woman you deserve." His chest literally puffed out. I could practically see his fragile masculinity inflating like a hot air balloon. He walked over, kissed my forehead, and said, "See? I told you. A little effort goes a long way. I'm proud of you, babe." He thought he had won. He thought he had successfully broken my spirit and molded me into his ideal submissive trophy. He had no idea he had just signed away every ounce of his free time and sanity. The trap snapped shut that very same evening. Usually on Thursdays, I'd stop by the grocery store after work, lug 5 heavy canvas bags up 3 flights of stairs to our condo, and have dinner prepped by the time he got home. But that afternoon, I called him at his office at 4:45 p.m. "Hey babe, what's up?" he answered, sounding busy. "Hi honey," I cooed, making my voice tremble just a little bit. Um, I'm at the grocery store, but I'm feeling really overwhelmed. The bags are just going to be so heavy, and my wrists have been aching all day. Plus, it's getting dark out, and you know how anxious I get walking from the parking garage alone at night. Do you think my big strong man could come help me? There was a long pause on the line. "Riley, I'm wrapping up a quarterly report. Can't you just use the shopping cart and take the elevator?" "Oh," I said, letting out a pathetic little sigh. I mean, I guess I can try. I just hope I don't drop anything or strain my back. There was a weird guy lingering near my car earlier, too, but I'll be brave for you. Don't worry about little old me. Wait, what weird guy? Okay, fine, fine. Just wait in the store. Don't go to the garage. I'm leaving now, he grumbled. When he arrived, I made him load all the groceries onto the belt, bag them, carry them to his car, and carry them all the way up to our kitchen. I just walked behind him, carrying my purse, telling him how incredibly strong and capable he was. He was sweating and panting by the time we got inside, but his ego wouldn't let him complain because I was showering him with the exact type of validation he had demanded. That was just the warm-up. By week 2, my weaponized incompetence was a finely tuned machine. I entirely stopped doing anything remotely physically demanding. If a jar of pasta sauce needed opening, I would hand it to him with a helpless pout. "Caleb, it's stuck. I'm just too weak." If a light bulb went out, I refused to enter that room until he came home and fixed it, claiming the dark gave me a panic attack. One Saturday, the smoke detector in the hallway started doing that high-pitched, low-battery chirp. Normally, I just grab a stool and swap the 9-volt battery in 30 seconds. Instead, I retreated to the living room, curled up into a tight ball on the couch, and covered my ears, practically hyperventilating. When Caleb came out of the bedroom, annoyed by the noise, I looked at him with tear-filled eyes. "Caleb, make it stop! It's too loud. It's hurting my ears. I can't take it. Please fix it, please." He had to drag the heavy stepladder up from the basement storage unit, figure out how to open the plastic casing, and go out to the convenience store to buy batteries because he didn't know where I kept them. It took him an hour. I just sat on the couch, trembling, thanking him profusely for being my hero. But the biggest shift was the driving. I told Caleb that the aggressive Chicago traffic was suddenly giving me severe anxiety. "It's a man's job to navigate the roads and keep us safe," I told him, quoting one of his favorite Red Pill podcasters right back to his face. "I just feel so much more secure when you're behind the wheel." Suddenly, Caleb was my personal chauffeur. He had to drive me to work every morning, which added 45 minutes to his commute. He had to pick me up every evening. If I wanted to go to a friend's house on a Sunday, he had to drop me off and pick me up. His beloved PS5 started gathering dust. His weekend golf outings with the boys were constantly interrupted because he had to come rescue his fragile girlfriend, who was too scared to take an Uber by herself. The exhaustion began to show on his face. Dark circles bloomed under his eyes. He was snapping at small things, perpetually stressed. He had wanted a traditional, subservient woman, but he had completely underestimated the sheer, exhausting logistics of caring for an adult who refuses to function independently. But the absolute masterpiece of my performance happened in public. I decided that a truly traditional, submissive woman shouldn't be speaking to strange men. It was disrespectful to her partner, right? So I stopped. We went out to a nice Italian restaurant for our anniversary. The waiter, a friendly young guy, walked up to our table. "Good evening. Can I get you two started with some drinks or appetizers?" I immediately looked down at my lap. Refusing to make eye contact with the waiter, I leaned over to Caleb and whispered, loud enough for the waiter to hear, "Honey, tell him I would like the sparkling water with lime. And the bruschetta." Caleb frowned, looking confused. "Just tell him, Riley. He's right there." I shrank back in my chair, looking terrified, and whispered even softer, "No, Caleb. You're the man of the house. You need to speak for us. I shouldn't be conversing with other men. Please, order for me." The waiter shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting between us. He looked at Caleb like he was a controlling, fundamentalist freak. Caleb's face turned bright red. He could feel the judgment radiating from the waiter. He cleared his throat, sweating slightly. She'll have the sparkling water, and we'll take the bruschetta." I kept it up the entire night. I wouldn't tell the waiter my order. I wouldn't answer when the manager asked how our food was. I just deferred everything to Caleb, playing the role of the silent, obedient property. By the end of the dinner, the staff was looking at Caleb with a mixture of disgust and alarm. And they clearly thought he was an abusive monster who had completely brainwashed and silenced his girlfriend. When we got to the car, Caleb exploded. "What the hell was that in there, Riley? You embarrassed me. You acted like a freak." I widened my eyes, letting a single tear roll down my cheek. "Embarrassed you?" "Caleb, I was just letting you lead. You said you wanted a woman who let you be the man. I was just trying to respect you. Did I do something wrong? Are you mad at me for being feminine?" I let out a soft, pathetic sob. He slammed his hands against the steering wheel, completely trapped in a cage of his own making. He couldn't yell at me for doing exactly what he had threatened to leave me over. "No," he gritted out through clenched teeth, his jaw ticking. "No, Riley, you did fine. Just, never mind." I looked out the passenger window into the dark Chicago night, hiding the massive, victorious grin spreading across my face. I was breaking him down, piece by piece, chore by chore. But driving him crazy in the privacy of our own lives wasn't enough. No, Caleb was a man who cared about his image, his career, and his reputation above all else. And next week was the annual Apex Meridian Corporate Gala. All the executives would be there. His boss would be there. His biggest rival for the new director position would be there. And so would his delicate, helpless, terrified little doll of a girlfriend. It was time to take the show on the road. The annual Apex Meridian Gala was the crown jewel of Caleb's corporate social calendar. It was held in the grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton downtown, all crystal chandeliers, overflowing champagne towers, and people wearing outfits that cost more than my first car. For Caleb, this wasn't just a party, it was a battlefield. The position for regional director of sales had just opened up, and the word around the water cooler was that it was a dead heat between Caleb and a guy named Marcus. Marcus was slick, charismatic, and ruthlessly ambitious. Caleb hated his guts. This gala was Caleb's chance to schmooze the senior partners, look like the ultimate family man, and seal the deal. While he was tying his bow tie in the mirror that evening, he gave me a stern look. "All right, Riley, I need you on your best behavior tonight. Mr. Harrington, the CEO, is going to be there. I need you to look pretty, smile, and make me look good. Understand?" I walked up behind him, wearing a floor-length, or conservative navy blue gown that covered my collarbones and gently smoothed the lapels of his tuxedo. I looked up at him through my eyelashes, the picture of absolute terrifying devotion. "Of course, Caleb," I whispered softly. "I'll follow your lead. I wouldn't dream of speaking out of turn. I'm just here to support my big, strong man." He smiled, kissing my cheek. "That's my girl." If he only knew. The moment we stepped out of the Uber and into the glittering ballroom, I activated maximum Stepford wife mode. I linked my arm tightly through Caleb's, pressing my body against his side like I was a frightened child in a haunted house. I kept my eyes focused firmly on the marble floor, only looking up when spoken to, and even then, I kept my gaze nervously darting back to Caleb for permission. Within the first 30 minutes, the atmosphere shifted. We were standing near the oyster bar when Marcus, Caleb's arch-nemesis for the promotion, strolled over with his wife. Marcus had that blinding politician-style smile. "Caleb, good to see you, man," Marcus boomed, extending a hand. Then he turned his million-dollar smile toward me. "And you must be Riley. I've heard so much about you. It's a pleasure." Marcus held out his hand to me. This was it. Showtime. Instead of taking his hand, I physically flinched. I shrank back behind Caleb's shoulder, my eyes widening in manufactured panic. I looked at Marcus's extended hand like it was a live rattlesnake, then looked up at Caleb, my voice a high, reedy whisper. "Caleb?" I murmured, my voice trembling loud enough for Marcus and his wife to hear. I don't know him. You said I shouldn't engage with strange men? What should I do?" The silence that fell over our little circle was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop over the smooth jazz playing in the background. Marcus slowly lowered his hand, his smile completely vanishing. He looked at me, taking in my terrified posture, and then he looked at Caleb. The look in Marcus's eyes shifted from friendly rivalry to deep, disturbing suspicion. Marcus's wife openly gasped, clutching her clutch purse to her chest, glaring at Caleb like he was a serial killer. Caleb's face instantly flushed a dark, violent shade of crimson. He let out a nervous, strained chuckle. No, babe. It's fine. It's just Marcus. He's a coworker. You can say hi." I shook my head rapidly, stepping further behind him, clutching his suit jacket. No, I want to respect your boundaries. You're the head of the household. I'll just let you two talk business. I'll be quiet. Marcus cleared his throat, suddenly looking incredibly uncomfortable. Right, well, excuse us, Caleb. I think Brenda needs a drink. He put a protective arm around his wife, and they practically sprinted away from us. As soon as they were out of earshot, Caleb grabbed my elbow, hard, and pulled me behind a massive floral arrangement. What the hell are you doing? He hissed, spit flying from his lips. Are you trying to make me look like a lunatic? Why didn't you shake his hand? I looked at him, letting my eyes well up with tears. But Caleb, you told me last week that a proper woman defers to her man. You said I was too aggressive and forward. I'm just trying to be the submissive, traditional girlfriend you demanded. Are you mad at me for listening to you? Are you going to yell at me again? I physically cowered, pulling my arms in. A group of middle-aged women, wives of the senior executives, were walking past us toward the restrooms. They stopped dead in their tracks, witnessing Caleb red-faced, hissing at his cowering, tearful girlfriend hiding behind a flower pot. They exchanged horrified glances and immediately started whispering to each other. Caleb saw them. He realized exactly what it looked like. He dropped my arm like it was on fire, his expression transforming into sheer panic. No, no, baby, I'm not mad. He practically choked out, forcing a terrifyingly fake smile for the audience of wives. I just relax, okay? Let's just go mingle. But the damage was already done. The rumor mill in a corporate office is fast, but at a gala fueled by open bars, it's downright supersonic. For the next 2 hours, I tortured him. I refused to order my own food from the roaming waitstaff, making him do it. When a male colleague asked me what I did for a living, I looked at the floor and whispered, I just do whatever Caleb needs me to do to support his dreams. I watched the realization dawn on the faces of his coworkers. The men looked at him with awkward disgust. The women looked at me with deep, profound pity. In their eyes, Caleb wasn't a hotshot executive anymore. He was a deeply insecure, controlling abuser who had emotionally shattered his girlfriend. They thought I was a victim of severe psychological manipulation. I mean, I was a victim of his gaslighting, but right now, I was the one holding the puppet strings. Then came the climax, the kiss of death. Mr. Harrington, the CEO of Apex Meridian, approached us. He was a stoic, old-school business patriarch in his 60s, known for valuing company culture and family values above all else. He held Caleb's career in the palm of his hand. Caleb, Harrington rumbled, nursing a scotch. Good to see you. And who is this lovely young lady? Caleb stood up incredibly straight, practically saluting. Mr. Harrington, sir, this is my girlfriend, Riley. Harrington smiled warmly and reached out to give my shoulder a friendly, paternal pat. I didn't just flinch this time. I let out a sharp, audible gasp. I recoiled so fast I nearly tripped over the hem of my gown. I threw my hands up defensively and backed away from the CEO of the company, my face a mask of absolute terror. Please don't touch me, I squeaked, my voice echoing slightly during a lull in the music. Several heads turned. I looked at Caleb, hyperventilating. Caleb, please tell him. Tell him you don't allow other men to touch me. I didn't do anything wrong, I swear. Please don't be angry. The silence this time wasn't just heavy. It was suffocating. Mr. Harrington's hand hovered in the air for a second before he slowly pulled it back. The warmth completely drained from his face, replaced by a look of sheer, icy disgust. He looked at me, trembling and pretending to cry, and then he slowly turned his gaze to Caleb. Caleb looked like he was going to vomit. All the blood had rushed out of his face. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He was completely paralyzed. If he explained that I was acting crazy, it would sound like he was gaslighting a terrified victim. If he agreed with me, he was admitting to being a controlling monster. He was utterly, hopelessly trapped. I see, Mr. Harrington said. His voice was no longer warm. It was the tone of a judge handing down a sentence. He didn't say another word to Caleb. He just gave me a deeply sympathetic nod, turned on his heel, and walked straight over to Marcus. 10 minutes later, Marcus and Mr. Harrington were laughing and clinking glasses. Caleb's career at Apex Meridian died right there on that marble floor. He didn't just lose the director promotion, he had instantly become a social pariah, a massive HR liability. Nobody in corporate America wants to promote a guy who openly terrorizes his partner. Caleb grabbed his coat from the cloakroom without a word. He didn't even wait for me as he marched out into the freezing Chicago air to call an Uber. I followed him quietly, maintaining my delicate, terrified persona. But inside my soul was throwing a victory parade. I had done it. I had used his own toxic, misogynistic rules to build a cage, lock him inside, and throw away the key in front of his entire professional world. The ride back to our condo was dead silent. The tension in the car was so thick you could have cut it with a chainsaw. Caleb stared out the window, his jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might shatter. I thought the game was over. I thought he would go home, scream at me, pack his bags, and we would finally be done. I thought I had won, but I had underestimated him. I had forgotten the golden rule of dealing with a true narcissist. When you back them into a corner and strip away their mask, they don't retreat. They get dangerous. The Uber ride back to our condo felt like it lasted for hours. The silence in the back seat was deafening. Caleb just stared out the window into the passing city lights, his jaw locked so tightly I could see the muscle ticking in his cheek. I kept my hands folded neatly in my lap, staring down at my expensive shoes, playing the role of the chastised, terrified girlfriend to absolute perfection. But inside, I was practically vibrating with adrenaline. I had done it. I had publicly humiliated him, destroyed his promotion, and exposed him to his entire professional network. I figured the moment we walked through our front door, he was going to explode. He would scream, throw things into a suitcase, and storm out of my life forever. I was so incredibly naive. We got out of the car and rode the elevator up to our floor in total silence. Caleb unlocked the front door and pushed it open. I walked in first, flicking on the living room lights. I turned around, putting on my best doe-eyed, trembling expression, ready for the final screaming match. "Caleb," I whimpered, making my voice shake. "I'm so sorry about tonight. I really didn't mean to." Click. Caleb shut the heavy wooden door behind him. Then he reached up and slowly turned the deadbolt, locking us inside. He didn't yell. He didn't throw his coat across the room. He just stood there, staring at me. And suddenly, the angry, red-faced, humiliated man from the gala was completely gone. His posture relaxed. His shoulders dropped. A terrifyingly calm, dead-eyed expression washed over his face. He let out a low, humorless chuckle that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. "You can drop the act now, Riley," he said. His voice was completely flat, cold. My heart did a strange little stutter in my chest, but I held my ground. "Drop what act? Caleb, you're scaring me. What are you talking about?" He slowly took off his suit jacket, folded it neatly over the back of the armchair, and walked into the kitchen. He poured himself a glass of water, took a sip, and leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. "I have to admit," he said, a sickening smirk playing on his lips, "you're a much better actress than I thought. The whole terrified of other men routine tonight? Masterful. You really had Mr. Harrington going. You actually managed to sabotage my entire career in the span of 3 hours." I swallowed hard. The air in the room suddenly felt very thin. I took a step back toward the hallway. "I don't know what you're saying. I was just trying to be the submissive woman you wanted." "Shut up," he snapped, the volume low but the tone absolutely venomous. "Just shut up, Riley. The game is over." He walked over to his work briefcase, unzipped it, and pulled out his sleek silver laptop. He carried it over to the kitchen island, opened it, and turned the screen around to face me. "Come here," he ordered. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to run, to unlock that deadbolt and sprint down the hall, but my legs moved on their own, slowly walking toward the island. I looked down at the screen. It was an audio file. He hit play. Suddenly, my own voice filled the kitchen, but it wasn't the high-pitched, whispery, helpless voice I had been using for the past 3 weeks. It was my normal, assertive voice. "Yeah, Chloe, I'm telling you it's hilarious." The recording of my voice echoed from the speakers. I literally made him carry 5 bags of groceries up 3 flights of stairs because I told him my wrists hurt. He's so exhausted he practically fell asleep at his desk yesterday. The idiot actually believes I forgot how to open a jar of pasta sauce. Then came the sound of my best friend Chloe laughing through the phone. The blood drained entirely from my face. My stomach dropped into a bottomless pit. I looked at the date on the file. It was from Tuesday. I had made that call while Caleb was at the office. "How?" I choked out, my real voice finally slipping through the cracks. "How did you get that?" Caleb tapped a key on his laptop, opening a hidden folder on his desktop. The folder was completely full of audio files, dozens of them. "I bought a voice-activated recorder 3 weeks ago," he stated casually, as if he were discussing the weather. "I taped it underneath the coffee table in the living room. You really think I'm stupid, Riley? You think I didn't notice the sudden personality transplant? You think I didn't realize you were maliciously complying with my request just to punish me?" I couldn't breathe. I backed away from the counter, my hands shaking. For real this time. You, you bugged my house? You've been recording me? Our house, he corrected smoothly. Then he clicked on another file. This one was a map, a live GPS tracker. I recognized the icon immediately. It was my car. I also threw an Apple AirTag into the spare tire compartment of your Honda, he continued. It was very enlightening. You told me you were too crippled by anxiety to drive to the grocery store, yet my tracker showed you driving to the Home Depot 3 towns over last Thursday while I was at work. He slammed the laptop shut. The sound made me jump out of my skin. He slowly walked around the kitchen island, stalking toward me like a predator that had finally cornered its prey. I backed up until my spine hit the wall of the hallway. You thought you were so clever, he whispered, standing mere inches from my face. I could smell the expensive scotch on his breath. You thought you could play this little game, humiliate me, and then what? Break up with me? Kick me out? No, Riley. That's not how this works. Caleb, get away from me, I said, my voice trembling with actual unadulterated terror. We're done. I want you to pack your things and get out of my apartment right now. He let out a dark, booming laugh. It was the sound of a man who had completely snapped. We are far from done. He smiled, his eyes completely hollow. You wanted to play the helpless, dependent, fragile little girl who can't do anything for herself? Congratulations, sweetheart. You won the role of a lifetime. But now we're playing by my rules. He reached into his pocket and pulled out my iPhone. He must have slipped it out of my clutch purse while we were in the Uber. Give that back, I yelled, lunging for it. He shoved me back against the wall, effortlessly overpowering me. He held the phone up, typing in my passcode. I had stupidly given it to him months ago, when we were building trust. While you were getting your hair and makeup done for the gala today, Caleb said softly, his thumbs flying across my screen, I did a little administrative work. I logged into your laptop. I sent a very concerning email to your HR department at the logistics firm. My eyes widened in horror. What did you do? I told them you were suffering from a severe, sudden psychological breakdown, he said with a cruel smirk. I told them your paranoia and anxiety had become completely unmanageable, and that you needed an indefinite leave of absence to seek inpatient psychiatric treatment. I even attached a drafted letter from a therapist, recommending immediate isolation from stressful environments. They won't believe you, I screamed, tears of pure panic springing to my eyes. I'll call them right now. I'll tell them you're insane. With what phone? Caleb asked, pressing a final button on my screen. The Apple logo appeared, a loading bar beneath it. He had initiated a total factory reset. He tossed the completely wiped, useless brick of metal onto the floor. And who is going to believe you, Riley? He leaned in closer. You spent the entire night at the biggest corporate gala of the year acting like a literal mental patient. You cowered behind me. You refused to speak. You screamed when the CEO tried to touch your shoulder. Every single executive in this city thinks you belong in an asylum. Your reputation is dead. He stepped back, admiring his handiwork. I also deleted all your social media accounts this afternoon, he added casually. Facebook, Instagram, when LinkedIn. Gone. I texted your dad from your phone this morning, telling him you were doing a digital detox and didn't want to be contacted for a few months. He was very supportive. I slid down the wall, my knees finally giving out. I hit the hardwood floor, pulling my knees to my chest. This couldn't be happening. This was a nightmare. He had systematically dismantled my entire life in the span of 12 hours, and I had handed him the ammunition to do it. You see, Riley, Caleb said, crouching down to my eye level, I lost my promotion tonight. My career here is finished. But that's okay, because I went ahead and broke the lease on this condo this afternoon. I took the liberty of using our joint savings account to put a down payment on a place. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, Inca dropping it into my lap. I picked it up with shaking hands. It was a Zillow printout. It was a dilapidated, isolated cabin in the absolute middle of nowhere in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. The nearest town was 40 miles away. The listing boasted about being completely off the grid. No cell service, no neighbors, just endless, suffocating forest. We move on Monday, Caleb whispered, brushing a tear away from my cheek with a cold finger. I flinched violently away from his touch. You don't have a job anymore. You don't have a phone. You don't have a car. I sold the Honda to a scrapyard 3 hours ago. You are going to be exactly the delicate, isolated, completely dependent woman you've been pretending to be, and you're going to be mine. Forever. He stood up, looking down at me like I was a bug he had just trapped in a jar. Now, he commanded, pointing toward the bedroom, go pack your bags, sweetheart. The helpless act isn't an act anymore. It's your new reality. I didn't sleep a single wink that night. I lay frozen on my side of the bed, listening to the deep, rhythmic breathing of the man sleeping next to me. Caleb was completely knocked out. He slept like a baby, entirely at peace, high on the absolute power and control he now had over my life. I, on the other hand, was fighting off a full-blown panic attack. My mind was racing a mile a minute. No phone, no car, no job. My family thought I was on a digital detox, and my company thought I was having a psychotic break. We were moving to a cabin in the middle of the woods in 48 hours. If I got in his car on Monday morning, I knew with a terrifying certainty that I would never be seen again. I had to get out, but crying, begging, or fighting him physically would only feed his ego and make him lock me down harder. I needed a strategy. I remembered an article I had read years ago about surviving narcissistic abuse. It talked about a survival tactic called the gray rock method. The premise is simple. When you are trapped with a toxic abuser, you become as uninteresting, unresponsive, and emotionally blank as a gray rock. You don't argue, you don't cry. You give them absolutely zero emotional reaction to feed on, lulling them into a false sense of security. When the sun came up on Saturday morning, the old defiant Riley was dead and buried. I became the rock. Caleb woke up in a fantastic mood. He walked into the kitchen, humming, and started making pancakes. Morning, sweetheart, he chimed, sliding a plate in front of me. Eat up. We have a lot of packing to do today. I want all the kitchen boxes taped up by noon. I didn't glare at him. I didn't cry. I just kept my face completely slack, staring blankly at the table. Okay, Caleb, whatever you say, I replied in a flat, monotone voice. He paused, looking at me closely. He was waiting for a spark of rebellion. When he didn't find one, a smug, triumphant smile spread across his face. He genuinely believed he had finally broken me. He thought I had accepted my fate as his captive. Because he thought I was utterly defeated, he got sloppy. Around 10 a.m., he grabbed his keys. I need to run to the leasing office to sign the final lease break paperwork, and then I'm hitting the hardware store for more bubble wrap, he announced, putting on his coat. I'll be gone for 2 hours. Keep packing. And don't even think about trying to use the landline in the lobby. I already told the doorman you're having a mental health crisis and to not let you out of the building unsupervised. Okay, I whispered lifelessly, neatly folding a dish towel. The second the front door clicked shut, and I heard the deadbolt lock from the outside. The gray rock shattered. I sprang into action. I sprinted to my bathroom and dug through my vanity drawers. Caleb thought he had cut off all my resources. But like any smart woman who grew up with a mechanic dad, I always kept an emergency stash. Deep inside an old half-empty box of tampons under the sink, I had 3 crisp $100 bills rolled up. I grabbed the cash, threw on a hoodie, and slipped out the back door of our condo that led to the emergency fire escape stairs. I bypassed the lobby entirely, running down 3 flights of concrete stairs and bursting out into the freezing Chicago alleyway. I had exactly 2 hours. I sprinted 3 blocks down the street to a sketchy corner bodega. I walked straight up to the counter, slapped a $100 bill down, and pointed to the cheap plastic prepaid track phones hanging on the wall. I need a burner phone, the cheapest one you have, and a $30 prepaid card. Right now? I panted, my breath pluming in the cold air. 5 minutes later, I was hiding behind a dumpster in the alley, frantically punching in the activation code with shaking fingers. As soon as the phone found a signal, I dialed the only number I knew by heart. My older sister, Morgan. She lived in Indianapolis, about a 3-hour drive away. Morgan was a no-nonsense, fierce ICU nurse, and her husband, Ryan, was a former Marine who was built like a brick wall. The phone rang twice. Hello, Morgan answered, sounding confused by the unknown number. Morgan, it's Riley. Shut up and listen to me, I choked out, the tears I had been holding back all morning finally spilling over. I am in danger. Caleb wiped my phone, deleted my social media, and he's trying to force me to move to an isolated cabin in Michigan on Monday. He's insane, Morgan. He's totally snapped. There was a dead silence on the line for exactly 2 seconds. Morgan didn't ask if I was overreacting. She didn't ask for proof. Where is he right now? Her voice instantly dropped into absolute icy business mode. He's out running errands. He'll be back in an hour. I'm sneaking back into the apartment so he doesn't know I left. Okay, Ryan is grabbing his keys right now. Morgan said, and I could hear the sound of doors opening and closing in the background. We are leaving Indy. We'll be in Chicago by early afternoon. Play along. Do not let him know you have a phone. Text me this number when you're safely back inside. We are coming to get you, Rye. Just hold on. Thank you, I sobbed quietly, hanging up the phone and shoving it deep into my sports bra. I made it back up the fire escape and into the apartment with 20 minutes to spare. When Caleb walked in, carrying rolls of packing tape, I was exactly where he left me, sitting on the floor, blankly wrapping coffee mugs in newspaper. The rest of Saturday was pure psychological torture. I packed my entire life into cardboard boxes while Caleb hovered over me, drinking beer and gloating about our new life off the grid. I texted Morgan under the blanket when I went to the bathroom. We set the extraction time, Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Caleb religiously went to his fancy boxing gym every Sunday morning for 2 hours. The plan was for Morgan and Ryan to park in the alley. I would grab my go bag, run down the fire escape, and we would vanish before he even finished his warm-up. But narcissists are unpredictable, and on Sunday morning, the plan violently derailed. At 8:30 a.m., I was fully dressed, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. My burner phone buzzed in my pocket. We are 2 blocks away, pulling into the alley. I walked out of the bedroom, expecting to see Caleb in his gym clothes. Instead, he was standing in the living room in his jeans, aggressively taping a massive box shut. "Aren't you going to the gym?" I asked, struggling to keep the panic out of my voice. He didn't even look up. "Nah, canceled my membership this morning. No gyms where we're going anyway. Besides, I don't want to leave you alone. You've been awfully quiet. I want to get this living room packed up today. Go get your important documents. Your passport, your birth certificate, your social security card. I'm putting them in my locked briefcase for safekeeping during the move." My blood ran cold. He wasn't leaving. And worse, he wanted to completely strip me of my legal identity. "Okay," I mumbled, my mind racing. I walked into his home office. He kept all our important files in a heavy oak desk drawer. I pulled it open. Empty. I frantically checked the other drawers. Nothing. He had already moved them. Where would he put them? I looked around the room, and my eyes landed on a small digital safe tucked into the bottom of his bookshelf. I knelt down. It required a 4-digit code. I thought about Caleb. I thought about his massive ego, his absolute obsession with himself. What code would a raging narcissist use? I typed in his own birthday, 0812. Beep, click. The safe hissed open. There they were, my passport, my birth certificate, and the title to the condo that I had bought before I met him. I grabbed the manila folder, shoved it into my tote bag, and slung it over my shoulder. Just as I stood up, the office door swung open. Caleb stood in the doorway, staring at the open safe, then down at the tote bag tightly gripped in my hand. The smug, which relaxed expression vanished from his face, replaced by a mask of pure, unhinged rage. "What do you think you're doing?" he snarled, stepping into the room and blocking the exit. "I'm leaving, Caleb," I said. My voice didn't shake. The gray rock was gone. I stood up straight, making full eye contact with him for the first time in weeks. "I'm walking out that door, and you are never going to see me again." He let out a sharp, crazy laugh. "Are you out of your mind? You're not going anywhere. You have nothing. You're a crazy, helpless little bitch, and you belong to me." He lunged forward, grabbing my upper arm with a bruising grip, trying to rip the tote bag away from me. I screamed, thrashing against him, but he was too strong. He shoved me backward, and I hit the edge of the desk hard. "I'm going to lock you in the bedroom until tomorrow," he spit, dragging me toward the hallway. "You want to play games? I'll show you games." Bam! 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 The sound of 3 massive, deafening blows against our solid wood front door echoed through the apartment. Caleb froze, dropping my arm. We both stared down the hallway. "Chicago police! Open the door!" A deep, booming male voice roared from the hallway. It was Ryan. Caleb's eyes widened in sheer panic. All the bravado, all the violent, controlling energy completely evaporated from his body in a single second. Bullies are always cowards when faced with actual authority. He started backing away from the front door, looking frantically around the living room like a trapped rat. I didn't hesitate. I sprinted down the hallway, threw the deadbolt, and ripped the front door open. Morgan and Ryan were standing there. Ryan wasn't a cop, but standing at 6 feet 3 inches, wearing a tight black t-shirt that showed off his military tattoos and carrying a heavy steel crowbar, he certainly looked terrifying enough. Morgan pushed past him, her eyes scanning me for injuries. "Are you hurt?" she demanded, grabbing my face. I'm okay, I gasped, clutching my bag. I have my stuff. Ryan stepped smoothly into the doorway, completely filling the frame. He locked eyes with Caleb, who was now cowering behind the kitchen island, visibly trembling. If you ever contact her again, Ryan said, his voice deadly quiet and dangerously calm. If you ever even look in her direction, I will come back here and we will have a very different kind of conversation. Do you understand me, you pathetic piece of trash? Caleb couldn't even speak. He just nodded frantically, his face pale as a ghost. He looked absolutely pathetic. The big, strong, controlling alpha male was reduced to a sniveling coward the second he met a man who wasn't afraid of him. I walked out of the condo and stood next to my sister. I turned back to look at Caleb one last time. You wanted a helpless, submissive woman, Caleb, I said, my voice ringing with absolute clarity. Well, you finally got your wish, because without me here to fix everything for you, you're entirely on your own. Have a nice life. I turned my back on him and walked down the hallway. We didn't look back. The drive from Chicago to Indianapolis takes about 3 hours. For the first hour, I sat in the back seat of Ryan's truck, clutching my tote bag to my chest, completely silent. My body was shaking so violently that my teeth were actually chattering. The adrenaline was finally leaving my system, replaced by the sheer, crushing weight of what I had just survived. Morgan reached back from the passenger seat and gently squeezed my knee. You're safe, Rye. He can't touch you ever again. That was the moment the dam finally broke. I sobbed until I couldn't breathe. I cried for the independent woman I used to be, for the weeks of terrifying psychological torture I had endured, and for the fact that I had almost let an insecure, entitled narcissist completely erase my existence. The moment we pulled into Morgan's driveway, the real work began. I didn't just want to escape Caleb, I wanted to make sure he could never, ever do this to another woman. The very next morning, the first thing I did was lawyer up. Morgan helped me find a ruthless family law attorney who specialized in coercive control and domestic abuse. Since Caleb had destroyed my phone, my lawyer used Morgan's phone to contact my wireless provider and pull the logs showing that Caleb had maliciously initiated the factory wipe. We also filed an immediate police report in Chicago regarding the Apple AirTag he had planted in my car and the secret audio recording devices he had installed in our shared living space without my consent, which, in the state of Illinois, is a severe felony violation of the two-party consent wiretapping law. Armed with a mountain of evidence of his stalking, digital abuse, and forced isolation, a judge didn't even hesitate. I was granted an emergency, permanent restraining order. Caleb was legally barred from coming within 500 feet of me, my family, or my workplace. If he sent so much as a single text message through a third party, he would go straight to a jail cell. Of course, I immediately went strict, 100% no contact. But through the legal grapevine and mutual acquaintances, I found out exactly what happened to Caleb after that Sunday morning. And let me tell you, karma didn't just knock on his door, it drove a bulldozer through his living room. Because he had signed the lease on that isolated cabin in Michigan and broken the lease on our luxury Chicago condo, he was financially on the hook for both. But here's the beautiful, hilarious tragedy of Caleb's situation. He didn't have a job to pay for any of it. His spectacular public meltdown at the Apex Meridian Gala had thoroughly blacklisted him. In the corporate world, word travels fast. Nobody wanted to hire the guy who had openly terrorized his terrified, helpless girlfriend in front of the CEO. And when the police showed up at his new apartment to serve him with a restraining order and question him about felony wiretapping, his few remaining friends completely vanished. The alpha male facade shattered. Everyone saw him for exactly what he was, a weak, pathetic, controlling abuser. I heard from a mutual friend that Caleb completely went broke trying to pay legal fees to defend himself against the wiretapping charges. He lost the cabin, his credit was destroyed, and he ended up having to move back into his childhood bedroom in his mother's house in Ohio. He is currently working a mid-level sales job at a paper supply company, making a fraction of his old salary, and constantly complaining on anonymous internet forums about how modern women are toxic. As for me, the road to getting my life back wasn't easy, but it was incredibly empowering. On Tuesday, I used my sister's laptop to email the HR director at my logistics firm. I explained everything, the domestic abuse, the coercive control, and the fact that Caleb had fraudulently sent that psychiatric leave email posing as me. I attached a copy of my police report and the restraining order. My company was amazing. They reinstated my position immediately, set me up with a new secure corporate phone, and even allowed me to work fully remote from Indianapolis for 2 months while I got back on my feet. It took time to heal. I spent 6 months in intensive therapy, unpacking the insidious nature of gaslighting. I learned that a toxic relationship doesn't always start with a black eye. Sometimes it starts with a subtle criticism about your clothes. It starts with someone making you feel guilty for being competent. It starts with someone demanding that you shrink yourself so they can feel taller. Today, I am thriving. I moved back to the Chicago suburbs, but this time, I bought a beautiful little house in a quiet neighborhood. Ironically, the local HOA is a bit of a nightmare when it comes to the height of my lawn, but I'll gladly take a strict HOA over a controlling boyfriend any day of the week. I got a new car, a new phone, and a massive promotion at work. Just last week, the trap under my bathroom sink started leaking. I didn't panic. I didn't look for a man to save me. I tied my hair up in a messy bun, put on a pair of old sweatpants, grabbed my heavy-duty wrench, and fixed it myself in 15 minutes. When I looked at my grease-smudged reflection in the mirror afterward, I didn't see someone who was too masculine or repulsive. I saw a survivor. I saw an independent, capable woman who refused to be broken. If you are watching this and you are with a partner who makes you feel like your strengths are flaws, if you are with someone who demands you play a submissive role just to keep the peace, listen to me very carefully. That is not love. That is possession. A real partner will celebrate your independence, not be threatened by it. They will hand you the wrench, not scream at you for holding it. Set your boundaries. Build your support system. And the moment someone tries to put you in a cage, even if they claim it's a cage made of love and tradition, you turn into a gray rock, you bide your time, and you run. You run, and you never, ever look back. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe for more stories, and let me know in the comments. What is the most ridiculous thing a toxic ex ever tried to control about you? Stay safe out there, and remember, never let anyone dim your light.